everybody doing? I hope you're enjoying well. My name is Renee Arnold, and I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Kristy Vienne, who is going to come and talk to us about the equitable access to STAR bundle. As we know, Dr. Vienne serves as our Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration and Chief Financial Officer here at Lone Star. And she's going to share this exciting information about the Equitable Access STAR Bundle, which is helping our students have a successful start at the beginning of the semester. Dr. Vienne has financial oversight for system administration, as well as multi-campus operations, budget, financial forecasting, and a lot of different
all those things.
Yeah, I know I personally have seen all the great enhancements, the cafeteria, the food services, and all the other things that Dr. Vienne and the team have done. So we're excited today to have her. So let's all welcome her as she comes forward today.
Hopefully you can hear me online and here in person. So I'm usually pretty loud and don't necessarily need a mic. So but we'll make sure if you can't hear me or something happens, please just let me know and I'll make sure to speak up or speak into the mic. So please feel free, if you're eating, need water, please continue to do that. Ask questions along the way. This is really a session for you to ask questions, to make sure you have the information to take back to your campus, to inform your colleagues. So ask questions as we go if you have something. We do only have 45 minutes, so I will try to get through it quickly so we can address any questions or concerns that you have. So please ask away. So when we talk about equitable access, how many of you have at least heard that term, equitable access? It's been a buzzword for probably 10 years. I know Lone Star has talked about it a number of years. And so I wanted to come provide a quick update for you all on where we are with the process for Lone Star. So this has been formally approved now by the Board of Trustees for Lone Star. So this is no longer something we're talking about. This is no longer something that is hypothetical. This will be implemented for fall of 25. So you will see this coming up. So we have been dripping information so far, and a lot of people are like, well, why didn't I know about it sooner? When are we going to know? So here's kind of the intro to that. And part of that is we don't want to do it too quickly or people start getting confused that it's for this semester, right? So we have to get the timing just so if we do it too soon, then people think it's for this semester. And so we want to make sure you have all the information you need, but it's timely when you need it for your students, and that students don't get confused. So this semester that we're in right now, that we are excited to see all those smiling faces next week, will still be what we call student choice model, as it has been. And then for the fall, we will be NREA model. Okay, so we're going to go through the program, ask any questions that you have even after this. So when we talk about equitable access, that is really a research term that has been used to introduce what we call an all-inclusive bundle of books for students. So I always refer to it as like the Build-A-Bear for textbooks, if you will, right? So it's an all-inclusive way to give students all of their things without having to do it themselves. So we will do all the heavy lifting on this. And so when we talk about STAR bundle, I'll go back. That was something we worked with marketing and students and asking input, because equitable access kind of can be confusing. So you will start to hear us refer to this as our STAR bundle, right? And really that is about start term with academic readiness. We want to make sure that you have a first day meaningful class period, right? Because how many of you teach and you're really 2 weeks into the semester still trying to get all of the resources, all of the things, right? And so you can't give a test because they don't have their things. So with this type of program, the whole part about it is that everybody has their stuff day one. We do the lift, right? So everybody has their stuff day one so that you can have a meaningful first day, right? So if you want to give a test the first week, they have all the things. So we'll talk about that, but begin with the end in mind. The idea is the whole point of doing this is for that outcome. So that day one, your students had the opportunity to have all of their resources available to them the first day of class. Okay, so thinking about that. So that is where the start term with academic readiness really jumps off from. It's the ability for them to be ready and be prepared, and you not having to lag the class waiting on the textbooks. And again, this is my 27th year in higher education. I have taught in some fashion from an undergraduate to a doctoral class for about 22 of those years, right? So I don't know that undergraduates are any easier than doctoral or vice versa, right? But we're always kind of in that pace of making sure they have their resources, and it does impact us. So that was kind of the premise of these programs when they first got kicked off. It's not really about the modality, it's really about the students being ready and that meaningful first day. So with this program, every student, so I'm going to say this and I'm going to repeat it. Every student will automatically be opted in this program. Okay? Every semester. Every semester it resets. The only way to make this work is that every student automatically opts in, and every student has the ability to opt out if it is not beneficial to them. The student controls the power, period. They have up until census or the last day to drop to make changes. We do that so that if they make schedule classes, if a class doesn't make, if whatever happens, they need to make adjustments, going from one class to the next could change the cost to them, right, if they were going to opt out of the program. So we will work to make sure that they have all of the education they need. And I'll go into the specifics of like, we are going to actually show them, if you're in the program, this is what it costs. If you are out of the program, this is what we estimate that it costs. They will get to see that. If it is not financially feasible for them, we don't want them in the program, right? If they're in a class with all OER, we want them to be able to opt out. But we also want them to come to your class prepared and ready, right? So kind of, again, beginning with the end in mind. So Lone Star will charge a flat rate of $21 per credit hour to the students. So $66 for an average 3-hour class is all in. All in. It will come off of their financial aid. There's nothing that they have to do up front. They're automatically in. $66. The average course typically is somewhere around $150 to $180 for a student on average. Now you may have a $6 textbook. Another resource may be $300, right? So it depends on the modality. So for students in this program, they're really looking at it across all classes. You can't say, well, my book is only $6, so they need to opt out, right? It's really about their entire course load. So as a faculty, I always recommend that you take kind of a neutral Switzerland stance, if you will, right? You're neutral. You can't just look at your class. You really have to look at the whole student. And we recommend that students do the research. They make sure that it's valuable for them. But at the end of the day, we can't just look at one course versus another because it is a flat fee across the board, regardless of discipline, regardless of major. So yes, this includes kits. My nursing folks, this includes nursing books. This includes all the things, okay? If you have one book, if you have 6 books, they're paying a flat fee that's charged on their registration, that if they have financial aid, we'll take care of it. And even if they're on a payment plan or any of those things, it's all taken care of for them, okay? So kind of thinking about that. So the START bundle will be delivered in a digital first modality as a preference, okay? The reason, and we'll get into a little bit, but it will be digital first, meaning all of their materials will be delivered through our online D2L platform. So the day that platform opens, the day that student has access to all of those materials in that library to them. They don't have to find the scratch off code. They don't have to write the little lottery tickets where they scratch too hard and the number's gone. Those are gone, right? Say goodbye to the lottery scratch off tickets. It will all be loaded in D2L. They will have all of their books in their hands, right? My daughter is a student athlete. She plays. She doesn't want to have to carry a 300-page book around, right? She likes it that everything's there to her wherever she is with her computer. So those are an example of it's all loaded digitally. If a faculty member needs, not wants, needs a physical material, we will have a way that you can request it be physical, because there are disciplines that do require physical. Meaning maybe it's a workbook that they have to fill out. Maybe it's part of a class where they have to have a comprehensive book. So we will still provide some physical materials based on the need of the course, but the preference and the leading modality will be digital, okay? That makes it easier because we're not mailing books, right? Already this week and this semester, we're worried about another freeze. It impacts the postal service. If any of you worried about your Christmas presents, whether they arrived or not, right? My daughter told me it was porch pirates, I guess, that take things now, right? So there's all those reasons that the mail is not always the best way for us to be waiting on textbooks. So digital first helps with that modality. So again, this is our logo. So thinking about start term with academic readiness. First day of class, when D2L opens, even if you're not an online class, you still have access to that shell. That would be where they would access all of their materials. Okay, you have an ebook. If you have a learning courseware, whatever you have, it's all in one place on that modality. Okay, so we're talking about it. Everything again begins fall 2025. So this is not for this week, so you don't want to confuse that for this period of time. We will begin to roll out as we get through the next couple of weeks, start marketing to make sure all the students we're already working on the adoptions for that, opening that. It will not change what you do on the faculty entry side. Everything you do will be the same way you do it now. It really will not impact faculty. The only highlight is that digital first mentality, okay? So just making sure that, you know, you're aware of that process. Yes? Yep. Yep, as long as they can reach D2L, they can pull it up on their phone, their laptop, their iPad, their, you know, Chromebook, whatever modality they have. And with our publishers, when we're talking, and I'll talk about this in a little bit too, some of the publishers will have like a print option where students might add a book on, like if they really feel like they need the book, then where available, publishers would make that available for an add-on. Like, okay, if you really want the book, you can buy it for $10 or something like that. That would be an add-on for students. But statistics show and research show that 80 to 85% of our students prefer that digital modality. And most digital allow them to print, allows them to highlight, read, make notes, all of those things. So I always think people think E and Kindle when we think of books, but textbooks have really, especially during COVID with paper shortages, digital has come a long way that you really can, you know, highlight, take notes, do all the things. And so all of those will be available. So yes.
Non-digital, you said it can be provided, if that's the only option. The question is would that also be available first day of class?
Yes, as long as there's not a custom or a limitation on it, and all of those things we would work through. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, the stores in a second. But yeah, so if you just say, the earth will not tilt on it, like we will stop rotating, everything will stop. If we don't have a physical book, we will have a process that faculty can say, I have a flower class that I need to be, and they're going to have to, or an art book, or, you know, whatever it is, we will work with you to make sure, and work with the publisher to make sure that that is the process. But what we're trying to do is get about 85 to 90% digital and only about 10% physical. But even at 10%, we're still talking thousands of books. And we'll talk about that in a second. Did I see another hand? Yes, ma'am.
It's not.
Yeah, and we've talked with that. I will continue to have that conversation with IT in terms of that. So again, if you required them to bring the book to class to do an exercise, then yes, then they would just be responsible for bringing that computer. But again, if there's a specific thing that a physical book is needed, then that may be, it just depends on the discipline, right? So that's where we would have to look at that, like what are they doing physically on the book at that time that they would need that? Because a lot of the digital materials allow you to print. And a lot of them have summary questions at the end, and you can print that and turn that in. So it really just depends on the specific discipline. We have seen this rolled out, and there are a handful of classes where there's sometimes challenges, and we work with the publisher to make sure that we know whether, okay, that needs to be print or that needs to be this. So we would work with the specific faculty on that. So, yes.
Open source, and it's kind of almost works against it in a way.
Yeah.
So stuff like I had some stuff sources would go back.
Yeah, and OER is an interesting concept, right? And I've used classes, taught a doctoral higher ed issues class, right? OER is the perfect thing for that, right? There's enough issues in the world where you don't need a textbook to talk about those things, right? So there's certain disciplines where OER is absolutely the right way to go and right appropriate. And so we don't want to discourage faculty from using or not using OER in this model. Right? Now, in that model, though, they still pay the flat fee because we're just looking at how many classes they take. And I'm going to show you some examples of that. What we found, though, with OER is when faculty are super passionate about OER and they build it and they customize it, it works fabulous, right? It's not always as sustainable when you're trying to replicate that, right? Math is difficult, right? Because STEM, and you want to meet them where they are. And again, I don't pretend to be a math faculty, but I'm just, there are certain classes that makes it challenging and others it's a lot easier. So I think we just want to be able to have you as a faculty have the freedom to adopt what you need to teach your class without having to worry about the cost, right? Because what we see is people are like, well, I really want to use this, but I'm going to let them use version 5, 6, 7, or 8 because it's too cost prohibitive, right? And so then as faculty, we care, we want our students to have it, but we really start then having to reference multiple pages and books and stuff about the cost. So really the whole intention here is not to compete with OER, it's to give faculty that choice to say, I know I'm the expert in my class, I know what I need to use. And so you're able to use that material without having to think about, oh, well, this is 300, this is 30, this one's actually better, but I want to be right. So it tries to level set that. I hope that helps. I mean, it really is a philosophical, yes, we can talk about very specific classes where OER is the right thing to do. And if a student has 2 or 3 classes, that's probably going to be important for them to opt out, right? And we would want them to do that. But that's where we can't look at it on a case-by-case basis. So, and we're going to work with the faculty, and we're going to work also to look at there are other ways where we can incentivize OER, because we don't want to take away where it's appropriate. But I also know of disciplines, not just at Lone Star, but other institutions where OER has been rolled out for cost, but it's a lot of lift on the faculty, and it's not as easy as it sounds. And so it's trying to balance that. So I hope and philosophically, we can talk more about that if you have interest, but it is really a philosophical conversation, right? So I hope that helps. So again, this would not include ADA. So if a student has very specific ADA needs, we would provide those textbooks to them through the same channels, the ADA. And so this would not impact them. They would not be forced as a student to have digital if with an ADA accommodation. So they would still be able to be in the program for the low cost and participate, but those materials would still be provided to them in the print and modality that they need. So just want to make sure that when we are talking about this, we're not talking about veterans or students who have accommodations where they might need a book read to them, through audio channels or large print or Braille or things like that. Okay. So just making sure we're on that. So again, adoptions will be digital first. If this school is required, again, lab manuals, things like that, we will make that work. And then when we talk about the process, we will be rolling that out soon. So I wanted to make sure I do have Amy Payne here with me. She's one of our team members who leads and helps with the adoption process. So many of you may have emailed with her or some of our team members, and she's going to be actively involved with the process as well when we talk about future enhancement and how we make that easier for students. But again, the whole idea of the equitable access is that it is an equal playing field for everybody, regardless of cost. And so they're not having to worry about, do I pay my rent or do I buy my textbooks, right? It's just an easy lift on the student that this is implemented for students. And I will tell you, there is a lot of research that it took a while for the research to catch up. Many of these programs were rolled out during COVID, but I've personally worked on a couple of the research projects, and a lot of research behind this does show that it does help completion, it does help retention, it does help all of those things. And again, it's not necessarily the program itself. A lot of that correlation resides on the fact that the students have the books available and they're not having to worry about whether I order them. So I remember having students in our class that didn't get their book till October for midterm because they're like, well, I really wanted to make sure I really needed my book, And so they'll go then try to buy it in October, either when they can afford it or they have a midterm. So with this, again, it's equitable in the fact that it just level sets it for everyone. So again, you're either all in the program or all out of the program. So I'm gonna say that one more time because that's very important. Kind of goes back to a faculty member being Switzerland in this, right? It's not about your class. It's not about your adoption. It's about the student's entire course load. So they are all in the program or all out of the program. They cannot opt in or out based off of your class, and you as a faculty member can't opt in or out, right? Everybody's in. We're all playing the same game, equal playing field. And the student has the power to opt out if it's not advantageous to them. But we calculate $21 based off of 10 hours, right? So if a student's taking 10 hours, $210 all in for that whole semester for all the textbooks, kits, all the things. The only thing that this would not include would be like consumables. So it wouldn't be like a calculator, right? It wouldn't be like lab goggles or a lab, something that they have to like get a size small or, right? But in the kits, as long as that is in the kit, then it would be included. But like it would not include what we call consumables that they would keep as a process. One of the things I will also want to mention, in this physical model, a lot of the programs, if you're comparing us to the schools, I will tell you, we will be the lowest cost doing this around. My goal and pledge to you is that we're going to do this together, and I'm going to lower that cost even further. But we all have to, work together to keep pushing that price down. But in our program, the students keep their stuff. So like if you have a physical book, they keep it. They're not going to return that back. Many of these programs are rentals, and if the student doesn't return it, then there are barriers put up and things like that. In this program, your book. If it is a physical book, that's their book to keep. We won't be asking for it back. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
So, glad you talked about physical books. Let's say that I'm in the fall and I'm taking a biology class.
Yep.
And a physical book. Take biology 2 the next semester.
Yep.
It's the same physical book. But if I've opted in, I'm going to pay for it at a very cheap rate, but I will now have 2 books.
Okay. So that's where we would argue that theoretically, if it's going to be digital first, and that there's just an extreme reason to pay. I can tell you, I've probably had, so this may or may not be the conversation, but I'm going to answer it in a different way, and then we come back to it. And then you know where to find me. We can have this conversation. So there's a lot of argument. Well, I'll teach history, biology, all those what we call continuing courses, right? History, 3 sections, 1 textbook, perfect world, we all work together. Well, that works well unless the student doesn't take them in the order, doesn't take the right faculty, takes it a different modality, right? So you have to make a lot of assumptions when we talk about the student. We have a path for them, and unless they're in a cohort that's tight, doesn't really work. Typically works in like a nursing or somewhere it's very low non-progression, but in most life, I may take math and be like, I don't know if I'm taking math again next semester. I might need a break, right? Or history, or I may take it somewhere else. So with this type of thing, ideally in digital, they would have the digital. And if they take another digital class, then they would have access to that piece in there. Because we see a lot of waste where students do buy things and then they don't use them. I've been in this world for a long time. I had students that would literally bring me books back that were still wrapped, and they never opened them, which is a whole nother conversation. So I think, with your modality, we want to make sure there's as minimal waste as possible. That typically that would be a digital book. And then that way they didn't buy the wrong book that they needed. We've talked with the publishers about having access. There's a couple of the publishers that they would have access to that book through that period of time. So they needed it. And so we're going to continue to push this envelope and do things that are different. So ideally the student would have access to all the materials they need through that period of time, even study guides and things like that. So we really want them to have access to that book for a long period of time. But there's no guarantee that a student will take something sequentially the way we may anticipate. So some will, some won't. So hope that helps. I apologize. I don't remember who was first. So maybe I'll go over here and come back. Okay.
Only textbooks? Could it be like novels?
If you're using a novel in your course, so if you're English lit and you want 6 readers, Shakespeare on, you adopt those 6 books and it's all included. So it's whatever resource that you've been using for that class.
If there's like an online book, that would be the precedent, or it would be.
That's correct. That's correct, unless there's a need for a physical book.
Okay, so like if I assign a book that doesn't have it here.
Then the publisher would, yep. Then that would be something that the publisher would come back, because we're going to go digital first. And then the publisher would be like, so that doesn't exist anywhere in the world, so it's going to default to print, right? But in the perfect world, we're going to lead with digital, right? And then we'll work just like we do now, making sure we can access it. So does that help? All right, I think over here.
Question about ticket shock for students that they are coming into the fall.
Yeah.
Or now set for 12-hour semester, they're going to be paying $252 more and then 15 hours. Do we know from other colleges that have adopted the equitable access, does it affect their enrollment? When students say, ouch, I can't believe that.
No, I've not heard from any schools, and I helped to establish one of the first programs of this in the state about 8 years ago, and helped at least 6 of the major universities do theirs. And not any of them have indicated that that was a correlated, statistical. I will say not all are created equal. We're going to do it cheaper than any of our peers in the state. And I will tell you, ours will be a separate line item, so they will actually see that it's for textbooks. A lot of that onus will be on us to market, share, help them understand what that fee is. But we actually feel like it'll be the opposite. It won't necessarily be a barrier because now their financial aid, if they have it, will be applicable to help pay for that up front. So it would all be covered, whether now a lot of them have to come out of pocket or if they have to do a book voucher. So if we hope that it speeds other things up. Other campuses actually bundle it in their tuition. So there's a lot of different competing factors there. But our whole goal is to create success, not barriers. And so that would be something we would monitor and look at through exit interviews. But I do not anticipate that would be a correlation. Yes.
When would they define it? Like, what if they take their classes and all the teachers say, I'm not using a textbook? It's too late for them to decline.
Up to the 12th day, so up to census. So they can opt in. I've seen students be like, my teacher told me to opt out, so I opted out. And then they'll come in 6 days later and they're like, but I went and priced my books and I think it's better for me to be in. We let them right back in. And so that's why I always say, try to, as a faculty, we encourage you to kind of take that neutral posture, because we think, I've seen it where people are trying to do the right thing, encouraging students to opt out, and then one textbook is $300 and they could have been all in for $210, right? So then I'll show you a couple scenarios. So I hope that helps. I just, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I also want to let you know, as far as price stock. Okay, sorry. As far as the pricing goes as well, one thing that we are doing that we didn't do at another institution, every student's also going to get a personalized comparison sheet. So they're going to compare market pricing, not necessarily what it costs to go through Academos, but market pricing averages, all their materials, and then what the bundle costs. So they will get that prior to the first day of class as well.
Yeah. So yes, they will have a customized experience with the student would say, this is what it would cost me to be in. This is what it would cost me to stay on. So we will be educating them and allowing them to make that decision. So does that help? Yes. Yeah, it depends on the publisher and the rights, but most all of them allow them to be able to get the information that they need. But for the most part, if some publishers allow you to print up to a certain amount, download a certain piece. So it really depends on the specific publisher and that material. Yes.
Question earlier, if I were to adopt not just a textbook, but a reference book, would there be?
That would be allowed. I mean, ideally, and we'll talk about what we call the buffet effect in just a second. So what we have to be careful of, but you need to be able to adopt what you need to teach your class, and the $21 includes what you have for your adoptions. If we start to see what we call the buffet effect, I think U of H has done some research, and I visited with them a couple of weeks, and that's the term some of their researchers were talking about. It's where somebody says, well, I really only need 1, but now I'm going to adopt 8 just because of that. So we do have to worry about what we call the buffet effect, meaning because I can go to the buffet, we don't want to then start adopting over what we need, right? Because some students might opt out, and then we don't want to over it, because then we could cause us to have materials that we don't need. So I want you to be able as a faculty to have what you need. So kind of going back to the OER part, what you need. but not much more, right? And it will still be based off of what is required, but you can always have recommended, and recommended books are not included, only required books, right? So like maybe an APA manual, if you want every student to have it and they need it for an English lit class, you would need to have that as required. But if every section of English needs that, then maybe only the first section has it as required and everybody else has it as recommended, because there's a good chance that they already have that book. Does that make sense? So required and recommended, which is on there now, would still be in play. So if we were under the, that was requested that CE be not included, because it was my understanding that they didn't need the textbooks. So that was a specific request from the disciplines not to include CE. So if they're in a credit class, getting credit, for the class, then their books would be calculated. They would be in the program if there's a textbook. If they're only in CE, then those books would not, like I said, it's my understanding there would not be any textbooks. The reason they requested to not be in there was that there was not a textbook. And we can talk a little bit more offline, but we had lots of conversations that they said specifically, they will not need textbook. They should not be in here. So for her question, we didn't want that to be a barrier. So those were excluded. So if somebody has a very specific one-off you want to send to me, send that to me and we'll research it. But that was specifically, we were told they would not need textbooks. So we didn't want to include them so they didn't have an unnecessary charge. So I hope that helps. If you're on here, either online or face, and you have a situation, please email us and we'll review that. So yes.
I heard it from Mario that we should be treating our students as we do the credit students. So they do everything, they buy the textbook. So in that case.
If we have a specific class, please email me, because again, that was the specific request that was made to exclude them, and we are able to put them in, but we were asked to exclude them so that those students didn't have unnecessary charges. So again, we were just the receiver of that from input. So if somebody feels very strongly that we need to look at that, then we do, because yes, he and I had that whole conversation. And Amy maybe can even help me remember, but it was our understanding that they would not ever have a textbook, wouldn't need a textbook. It would be an unnecessary charge. So if we want to talk offline, I'm happy to do that, because I'm happy to include them, but our intention of excluding them was to help, not to harm. So.
Yeah, but my other question was about understanding and just clarifying.
Yep.
E-based. So this is based per class, student, right? So if I have a student, other than the PDA compliance, but if I have a student who simply knows that they're going to learn better with a physical textbook,
they can opt out and they can buy the books on their own selves. They would opt out of the program and buy whatever book they need for whatever class they need. However, eBay, the publisher, their brother down the street, however they want to, they would opt out and do that. They're either in the program or they opt out to get it. Now, some publishers, if they have a printed book, allow the student to purchase that book for like $10, and that would still be an option. Does that make sense? So I want to make sure I want to make sure you heard the rest of this. So some publishers have a print option that's like $10 or $15. That's a loose lift that is offered. Many of them will have that. It would be an additional cost to the student of that $10 or $15 to buy that physical book if they want it, but that would be on their cost if they're still in the program. Or a student can choose to opt out and obtain their materials any way they would like. So that's why I say the student controls the narrative. They have all the power in the situation, if they feel like it's advantageous or not. But again, many of them, the digital books will let you print so many things at a time. And so I am personally someone who likes to print things, but I like digital because I can carry it with me, and I'll print things and highlight and do those things. So again, even digital will allow you to have print availability, read to you, listen to it. So there's lots of options. But again, many of the publishers will have an add-on that the student, if they just feel they need it, can get that add-on. So other questions? Yes.
Maybe I'll just employ, sign up for this program, they get some copy of it also, or is it?
Yes, so the digital book is all loaded in D2L. So it'll be a physical book in there. If it's what now you may have adopted digitally. Say that again.
If you sign up for this club, they get at the end of the class, maybe issue a copy of your own.
It depends on the publisher and the rights. So to her point, if it's allowed, some publishers allow you to download, some publishers, you get it for that semester. Some of the publishers that we're working with will give them access as long as they're enrolled. So it just depends on the specific material. The publisher, so I know you're all going to be surprised. No, this will really surprise you all. But publishers have found a way to make money, right? So when we were in school, they would print 2 million copies of the textbook. They put them in a warehouse and nobody would change the edition until, guess what? All of them were gone, right? Now they have figured out how to make money. Now that it's a world of digital, they work on that. So some of them are, smaller ones are very tight about that, what they give. Some of the larger ones are. So I will tell you, it's not the bookstore. It's not this program that controls it. It really is the publisher who controls what we have access to, what they print and those sort of things. So I think take all that into consideration on what you're adopting. Because as the faculty, you control that. And so just, I hope that's helpful, but some will allow that, but others will not, because if they gave it away for free, nobody would ever buy it again. So is that helpful? Maybe. Yes.
$21 per class.
Spread it out.
Per credit hour.
So that's what I said. So $63 per class, all in for those textbook resources across the board. So let me show you.
They opt out by class, not by their whole.
No, they opt out their whole, you're either in or out.
Semester, not by class.
So you're either in the program or out of the program. So this is why I would change. So this is not exactly what the student sees, but this is an example that I want to show you. Sorry, there's a lot of outside noise. We can shut those. So when we look at this, so this is student one. So this is an actual student that we pulled data on. So this is a nursing student. So this student's taking 10 hours. These are actual textbook charges for this student. Okay, these are actual students that we ran. I don't know what happened there. Okay, we'll go to this one. So, there we go, we're back. All right, so in this student, you can see no brainer, right? Everybody agree? Scenario one, no reason you wouldn't be in there. Scenario two gets a little bit tighter, right? I've got an 82, a 91, and one is right, so you get us here. But the student here in the savings is still saving about $130. And I didn't have to go shop. I didn't have to worry about where to buy them. I didn't have to pay it out front. I didn't have to ship, right? So again, I told you I've done this before. I literally had a mom at orientation. She had all the questions. She was like very cynical. And she called me like a week after school. She's like, let me just tell you, I spent 12 hours shopping for Sally's books. I did all the things. And she said, I saved $33. She's like, you can have it. I'm not doing that every semester, right? So for her, it was more expensive, but it wasn't worth the $30. I understand not every student of ours has that privilege, but I just want to give you a sample that there is some about the shipping and the payment and all of that. And if I switch classes, they may not give me my money back. In this product, we make our students whole. So in this, if a student switches classes, they will be whole. They're not paying more because they switch classes. They're not paying more because sometimes there are inhibitors. If I go to another class, this class now has a $130 book as opposed to the OER that I was in. That's a barrier, right? So that goes away with this. I can really take what I need and I'm not picking based off of those things. So in the third example, you can see arts, 0. No, it's OER. They don't have to worry about anything, right? In that scenario, in this thing, there's still about a $36 saving, even with one class having 0. So that's why I say you can't look at it based off of a class. It really does have to be looking at it across the whole period. Because if the art faculty said, hey, you should not be in this because my book is 0, then potentially the student opts out and doesn't realize what they could have still saved in the program. So does that make sense? Okay, I know that's a lot, so I just want to make sure adjusting that. Yes. Yeah, if a student is in a payment plan, then again, they don't have to worry about getting their books and paying out of pocket. They would just pay for this as part of their payment plan. So again, equitable, we're making it a fair across the board and students aren't having to worry about how to get their books out of pocket. So yes, payment plan, financial aid, any of those methods, a student would still have this taken care of and would not be ostracized from not being in the program for that reason. Yes. So till census, so the last day to drop pick up. They can pick up and drop, and so again, like anything, we have to eventually cut it off. And so that every student, so I'm gonna say this because I didn't know this was something I needed to say. So if you hear about this in your students, so if you see a crazy email from me, this is why that I say it. Every student, whether they're in the program or not, will have access to those digital materials for the first, say, 2 to 3 weeks, right? Because we don't know who's in and out, so we're not gonna play cut off the book, right? So, but about week 3, we're gonna be like, okay, you're done. Like we'll cut off the digital access if they've opted out. So I'm gonna say that one more time. Everybody has access for the first 2 or 3 weeks till they figure out their life and whether they wanna be. Once census comes, we run a list of everybody who opted out and the publisher, right? Because then they're in the business to do what? Make money. The publisher cuts their access off, right? Not Kristy, so don't send me an angry email. We will work with you, but it's not me. It's the publisher cuts off their access, and then the student doesn't have access. The reason I'm telling you that is because at first, when I first did this, we had students that would opt out, and they're like, well, I don't have to buy the materials because my faculty member's giving it to me for free. What do you think? No, your faculty's not giving it for you for free. That's us. That's the STAR bundle, right? So in that regard, we then had students say, well, oh, I need textbooks now. So after that cutoff, we can't put them back in. It's out of my control. Even if I agree with all the reasons that they made a bad mistake, I don't physically, nor anybody in my team, because the publisher has cut off licensing. So everybody will have digital access for those first couple weeks. And then we will let you all know, hey, just to be aware, if students start to lose access, this is not a D2L. If they're losing it, it's because they've opted out of the program and we're taking away their textbook rights, if that makes sense. So yes. It's my understanding we will follow, because again, up until that 12th day is when they can make changes. If a student drops any changes, so that's why we intentionally follow that day, because that's the last day they can make it. Because again, I might have made a change that now I want in, so they can get in and out. And I know you might think I'm crazy, but they do. They'll be like, oh, I'm in, no, I'm back out. Now this book is $300. They're pretty savvy. You know, they figure it out. And so in that regard, we match it. If a student drops a month later and says, I can't do it, I'm out of school, if they are eligible for money back from Lone Star for tuition, then they would also get that equal amount back in textbooks. So it will follow that refund schedule. If they get nothing back in tuition, then they would get nothing back in textbooks. But if they were entitled to 100% tuition refund based on the date they drop, they would get 100% refund in books. If they're eligible for 10%, then they would get 10% of books as well. So to keep it simple, it will follow those two things. So yes. Yes, lots and lots and lots of emails. And I say that because I know y'all find this surprising, but guess what? Don't read them. So that's why I'm talking to you all. And I am happy to come talk to you, your divisions, your carrier pigeons, however we can get into it. But it will take all of us to communicate this, because we are doing this to support students. This is all about the students. This is not to make the bookstore rich. This is not about any of those things. This is to support students. And we want to make this easier for you. And we're going to just have to do this together collaboratively. And so we want to work with you as a partnership to make this successful for students. There is something I'm sure we will not get to my standards of perfect the first time, but I promise you and assure you that nobody wants to get this more right than me. To set up our students for success. So I do pledge to you that we will need some grace, that we'll have to do some tweaking, but we will get this right and support our students. And we, in the long run, I stand behind that this is absolutely the right thing to do for students. So, and I know we're almost or way over time. So I've got so I've got lots of questions. So I do want to tell you, so hang tight, and I'm happy to stand. I want to get through this real quick. Again, talked a little bit about the buffet effect. We will give you this presentation. The presentation will be recorded. I will come back. I will have, you can have me or any of our team members explain the things. Do want to talk about adoptions. We've got to get adoptions right. We got to get them right the first time. So we have, because guess what? Garbage in, garbage out. If you adopt the wrong thing, your admin adopts the wrong thing, whoever adopts the wrong thing, is wrong. It's going to be wrong in the system. We don't control the adoptions. We're going to continue to work on training and education to get it right, because if it's wrong in the system, it's going to be wrong in D2L. So we want to work on this period. So I want to make sure that you're aware. We're already working on looking at ways to make that better. I want to talk about campus stores. If you walk around the corner right here, you can see CyFair's got their store. They're unboxing things right now. The campus stores will open this Friday. As faculty and staff, you get 10% discount on all merchandise, and you get 20% off of supplies. We are calling them campus stores because they will not have physical books in there to sell. They will have computers to sell. Students can use their financial aid to get computers. They can get supplies. They can get all of those things. And in the fall, when we're doing EA, the stores will be the physical place that books will be distributed that are physical. So that burden is gone back to the bookstores to actually distribute the physical materials. So I want to make sure that you are aware that we are opening them for a two-step process. Students can get supplies with financial aid if they have them. They can buy computers. The stores will have them as of Friday, and they will also be open Saturday as per requested. I even think maybe Dr. Lambert back there asked us that to make sure that we were open for Saturday for students. But they will be open and fully operational, but they do not have textbooks per se on the shelf for students to go buy. They can help, they can assist with those sort of things, but they will not be selling actual physical textbooks until the fall. And that would only be those that are the physical books that we do have, and they will be distributing EA books. So I wanted to make sure that you were very aware that even as you see those, definitely go in there, but that is not necessarily where your books for this semester will be sitting on the shelf for students to buy. So I did want to make sure y'all were aware of that. And also I wanted to put, if there are questions later, because I know I only got 45 minutes and I'm way over, sorry, that we would have this information for you to be able to ask questions either now or later. And again, academos, our teams are on the campuses. They will be on your campuses next week and late this week when the bookstore is open, answering questions and there to support any faculty with issues for this semester. We don't want to, we're talking about EA, but we're here to support you now as well. So, yes.
If they opt out, can they still order their books through academics?
Yes and no. So if they opt out, they can go online and order their books, or if it's a physical book, they could walk in and buy just that physical book. But because we're feeding through D2L, they're not, those digital codes and things like that aren't sitting on the shelf today.
So you'll have them in stock?
The physical books will be in stock.
Even if
They opt out, yes. If they opt out of the program and they want to walk into the bookstore in the fall, so not tomorrow, so fall.
you'll know how many books you need based on.
We're going to order based on capacity of the class. That's why everybody goes in, because there's no way for us to guess otherwise, right? So if you got 30 people, you got 30. We order up to session plus a little. And so that's why custom and some of those things kind of in Ellen's class, it's like when people drop out or if they pick up books and we only order 30 and 5 people drop, we have to kind of be careful because sometimes that's why we get back orders, because those we order to capacity, 5 kids drop, 5 people add, those 5 kids already picked up the books. So now we're 5 short. So that is what's challenging about physical. That's why we lead with digital, because you don't have that problem with digital. So probably more than you wanted to know, but that's the.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure like they could still get all, technically, if it's all physical books, they can still get it all at once.
Yes, but ideally 90% of the classes will still be digital, so they might only be able to get a book.
Okay.
That makes sense? Yeah. All right. So I think we're out of time and they're going to cut off my mic in a second. So I'm happy to answer questions outside if you have those for me, or happy to email or answer. Appreciate you being here. Excited to see the excitement and would love to help answer any questions that you have. So
Thank you, Dr. Vienne.